Well, it seems like a lot of people's faces were eaten after they voted for the Leopards Eating People's Faces party, and of course, they never thought that their faces would get eaten. Now, I want to show you what I mean. So on Monday, Trump announced that he is signing an executive order on day one, implementing a 25% tariff on all goods imported from Mexico and Canada. He also announced a 10% tariff on imports from China, in addition to the Chinese tariffs that are already in place. Now, this predictably led to a spike in Google searches for, quote, what is a tariff in predominantly red states that voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. And now people are kind of panicking because they're realizing that this is going to impact them in a very negative way. So if you were one of the people that voted for a fascist because you thought that he'd bring down the cost of groceries, I have terrible news for you. That is not going to happen. In fact, the cost of living is going to increase because of these tariffs. For starters, groceries are going to go up in price. We rely on Canada and Mexico for a lot of agricultural imports, such as fruits and vegetables, as well as meat and dairy, and a 25% tariff specifically on agricultural products means that's going to increase the cost of things like avocados, beef, cheese, tomatoes, and other items. But that's not all, because per Newsweek, you can also expect cars to cost an additional $1,000 to $5,000 since cars sold in America are either assembled in Canada or Mexico, or they source the parts from those countries. Specifically, analysts believe that the cost of engines, transmissions, tires, and replacement parts are going to increase because of these tariffs. You can also expect the cost of electronics to go up, including phones, TVs, laptops, and other items that are manufactured in Mexico. A lot of them are. Of course, you can also expect higher gas prices, an increase in the cost of items that use plastic since we import a lot of plastic material from Canada and Mexico, and also industrial equipment is going to cost more, as well as the materials required for construction like steel and aluminum, which will affect everything from soda cans to the cost of homes. And to paint a better picture for you, economist Tara Girari did the math for us, and as you can see, the cost of oils, minerals, lime, and cement is going to increase in cost by more than $26 billion. Wood, cork, and paper is going to cost nearly $7 billion more. Base metals and tools is going to cost an additional $8 billion. And keep in mind, we're talking about just because of the 25% tariff on Canadian goods. With regard to the 25% tariff on Mexican goods, Derek Guy, who is a menswear journalist, explains that popular brands such as Nike and New Balance are produced in Mexico. And that means that the cost of Levi's jeans will go from about $80 a pair to nearly $100 for a single pair. A Patagonia hoodie is going to go from $90 to about $111. But this is just a base increase. We're not even factoring in retaliatory tariffs, which will make the cost of goods go up even more. And both Canada and Mexico have threatened to do just that, put tariffs on things in response to our tariffs. So yay, trade war, right? But in short, the cost of living is going to go up because of these tariffs, because tariffs are inflationary since the increased cost is passed on to consumers, not other countries. And this is something that people just don't seem to understand, which is why I think it's really important to have it broken down in the simplest way possible. Case in point.
Who pays for tariffs? Not the company that you are tariffing. So let's use the favorite example. China exports stuff to us and then we tariff them, right? We, as an importer of Chinese goods, pay for the tariffs, not China. I think that's what the most important fact that people need to understand is that the company exporting the product does not pay for the tariff. How it works is this. They put stuff on a boat. It arrives here. When the company that imports it and distributes and sells it, let's say Costco, whatever, the distributor, goes to the port and takes it, they pay for the tariff there.
At the port?
At the port, yeah. It's all clear, when you clear customs.
Okay.
It's collected there. And basically what happens is when the product reaches the shelves, it's more expensive now. So what would...
so there's more cost to get it
it's like
here.
I did that example before, right? Okay, you buy a t-shirt for $10 without tariffs, right? And you sell it here for $12. Right? Mm-hmm. When you tariff China $2 on that, then it's going to cost you $12 to get here. You're not going to sell it at zero profit. You're going to have to bump the price up.
And bump up the cost they will, because American companies aren't just going to eat the cost of Trump's tariffs. They're going to make you pay for that. And they might even hike up the cost a couple of extra bucks if they think that they can get away with it. It's what they did in the aftermath of the supply chain crisis that was induced by COVID-19. It was called greedflation, where corporations hiked up the cost of their goods, not necessarily because of supply chain issues, but because they thought they could get away with it. And guess what? They did. And if you don't think that they're going to do that again in the face of Trump's tariffs, I've got bad news for you. In fact, some corporations are already making anticipatory cuts to prepare for Trump's tariffs. For example, this YouTube comment went viral the day after the election where this person says, "My husband works for a small manufacturing company, and here in southwestern PA, that means most employees are Trump voters. When the president of the company sat them down today to tell them their annual Christmas bonus would not come this year because they now need to purchase at least a year's worth of products prior to January 1st due to the proposed tariffs, they did not understand. My husband said that their president had to explain what a tariff is and how it directly hurt their company. They all thought the foreign company paid the tariff." But to be fair, it's not just voters in southwestern PA. It's Trump voters all across the country that vote mostly based on vibes while not looking at any of the policies that either of the candidates were proposing. And I have my criticism of Kamala Harris, and I voiced those criticisms on this program, but she actually did introduce a plan to go after corporate price gouging, which would have helped a little bit to bring down the cost of goods. And then Republicans and Donald Trump responded by calling that plan communism. And presumably Americans agreed with that because they don't know what communism means. Never mind the fact that her plan would just federalize laws that are already on the books in dozens of states, including red ones. But since the scary communist boogeyman was invoked, people decided to vote for the candidate who explicitly campaigned on what would effectively be a new sales tax: tariffs. Doesn't make any sense. And this is what we're getting now. Trump said he was going to do it, and he's doing it. This is what Americans voted for, and now we're all about to find out after you all fucked around. And just to be clear, Trump supporters are indeed in the finding out phase. Not all of them, but some of them are realizing that Trump's policies aren't actually going to help them. And I say this because when news broke that Trump would do the thing that he said he would do when he was running for president, there was a bit of a meltdown in the conservative subreddit because they either were ignorant about what tariffs were or didn't think Trump would actually follow through. And I want to show you a couple of examples because this is the perfect illustration of leopards eating people's faces and people voting for the leopards eating people's faces party while not expecting their own faces to get ate. So this is the top comment in the thread on the conservative subreddit about this issue. Quote, "We trade over $1 trillion between Canada and Mexico each year. That's close to 4% of our GDP as a reference to scale. If this actually goes through, we're going to see some ugly price spikes for the next couple of years." Yeah, no shit. Now, that comment actually had 1.6 thousand upvotes, but somebody chimed in trying to defend Trump, saying he's manufacturing leverage to negotiate. And as you can see, that person was downvoted into oblivion because they all know that it's bullshit. And then a Canadian conservative chimed in saying, "Isn't the current version of NAFTA the one Trump negotiated last term and called it a perfect deal for the US?" And it's just so amazing because they're so close to getting it, but they're just not quite there. But there's more. This person says, "That's not a very good idea if you are trying to reduce inflation and increase take-home pay." Yeah, you think? This person says, "The Constitution is very clear that any raising of revenue is supposed to come from the House of Representatives. The president was never supposed to be able to levy a tax unilaterally. That is the power of a king, which the president is not." Oh, and you voted for Donald Trump? Really? You're concerned about this? "Congress unconstitutionally delegating this power along with many others is something conservatives, especially through the state legislatures, need to oppose vehemently regardless of who the president is." This person adds, "Tariffs upon tariffs make everyone poor." Yep. Shouldn't have voted for that. "I have full confidence that this, in fact, will not happen." Well, I suggest you hope in one hand and shit in the other butt and see which one fills up faster. This person says, "Nah, fam, Trump isn't perfect, so we need to point out the bad, and this ain't it. He's obsessed with tariffs, and this is a bridge too far." Right, but I mean, this is what you voted for, is it not? I mean, you had ample time before the election to learn about tariffs and the impact that they'd have on our economy and on consumers specifically, but you either chose to not educate yourself, or you didn't care, or you thought that Trump wouldn't do that, which is naive. But I mean, now we all have to live with the consequences of your decision. And it's interesting to me that people in panic mode right now were totally cool with Trump when they thought that he would only fuck over immigrants and marginalized people. But now that they're realizing his policies are also going to hurt them in a really material and concrete way, all of a sudden they're up in arms. Now they care about the impact of his policies. Doesn't feel good, does it? You didn't just vote against the interest of other people. You voted against your own self-interest as well. you were just too stupid to realize it. And honestly, fuck these people. I have no sympathy for them because we all have to live with the decision that you made. And so I'm not going to feel sympathy for you when other people who didn't do that, who knew what they were voting for, are also going to suffer, right? This is what you voted for. So I don't know what to tell you. I am enjoying the Schadenfreude. But speaking of Schadenfreude, Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario, who is kind of the Canadian equivalent of Donald Trump, but he was a little bit of a Trump guy himself, and he was giddy after Trump's win. In fact, his daughter posted a video of his wife wearing a Trump shirt on Instagram on the day that he won. And Ford himself, he said it was time to bet big on the U.S.-Ontario relationship in response to Trump's victory. And in an interview with Isaac Callan of Global News after Trump won, Ford explained why he was so confident that Trump would be a great business partner for Ontario.
What do you think that President-elect Trump will mean for Ontario?
Well, we dealt with him before, right? We dealt with him for a couple of years when he was in office. He knows that we're a very important trading partner. He knows that 9 million Americans wake up every morning to make products for Ontario. He knows that we're the third largest trading partner in the world, Ontario, $500 billion, and we're the number one trading partner to 17 states and number two to 11 other states.
Oh, is that so? You thought that he would value Ontario as a trading partner because of their long-term relationship with so many U.S. states? Really? You thought that? That's so adorable to me. But fast forward to Trump's tariff announcement, and all of a sudden, he's heartbroken, saying, it's like a family member stabbing you right in the heart. And he adds, it's the biggest threat we've ever seen. It's unfortunate. It's very, very hurtful to Canadians and Americans on both sides. And he says Canada would have no choice but to retaliate. Yeah. Now, Mexico's president also implied that they're going to retaliate as well, which means that this move from Trump could instigate a trade war with our North American neighbors, which is not good. Although Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, and Sheinbaum, the President of Mexico, are both saying that they are still willing to work with Donald Trump, but they're making it clear shit's going to hit the fan if Trump actually does go through with this. Now, Trudeau himself reportedly did say that he had a positive call with Donald Trump, although this news did send him scrambling as he had to call an emergency meeting in response to Trump's tariff announcement. But I do want to talk about the response from the president of Mexico, because she is without question the strongest, most intelligent leader in all of North America, and her response to Trump's tariffs was absolutely perfect. But before we get to her response, I want to actually read you Trump's announcement of tariffs on Mexico, because she addressed some of the things that he said specifically. And in order to know why her response hit so good, you've got to have the full context. So he said this, quote, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before. Right now, a caravan coming from Mexico composed of thousands of people seems to be unstoppable in its quest to come through our currently open border. He then talks about the tariffs and says it'll remain in place until the flow of fentanyl and immigrants stop coming into America. So that's what he said in his announcement. Now let's get to Sheinbaum, because what she said is great. Her full response, I'm going to put that up on the screen if you want to read the full thing. So pause the video right now if you want to do that. But I'm not going to go through all of it. I'm just going to read some highlights that really speak to how brilliant she is. She writes, Dear Mr. President-elect, I am writing to you regarding your statement on Monday, November 25th, concerning migration, fentanyl trafficking, and tariffs. You may not be aware that Mexico has developed a comprehensive policy to assist migrants from different parts of the world who cross our territory en route to the southern border of the United States. As a result, and according to data from your country's Customs and Border Protection, encounters at the Mexico-United States border have decreased by 75% between December of 2023 and November of 2024. Moreover, half of those who arrive do so through a legally scheduled appointment under the United States CBP-1 program. For these reasons, migrant caravans no longer arrive at the border, so he's lying there. Even so, it is clear that we must work together to create a new labor mobility model that is necessary for your country, as well as address the root causes that compel families to leave their homes out of necessity. If even a small percentage of what the United States allocates to war were instead dedicated to building peace and fostering development, it would address the underlying causes of human mobility. God damn. She later says 70% of the illegal weapons seized from criminals in Mexico come from your country. We do not produce these weapons, nor do we consume synthetic drugs. Tragically, it is in our country that lives are lost to violence resulting from meeting the drug demand in yours. For every tariff, there will be a response in kind until we put at risk our shared enterprises. Yes, shared. For instance, among Mexico's main exporters to the United States are General Motors, Stellantis, and Ford Motor Company, which arrived in Mexico 80 years ago. Why impose a tariff that would jeopardize them? Such a measure would be unacceptable and would lead to inflation and job losses in both the United States and Mexico. And of course, she closed by calling for dialogue. And that is such a powerful statement because she is making it clear that Mexico is not the cause of all of the problems in the United States, contrary to popular belief and contrary to what Donald Trump says. In fact, U.S. policy in particular, guns that we produce and whatnot, that causes a lot of problems for Mexico. But I've got to read the part again where it's just incredible, where she does a mic drop, because I don't think any other world leader has diagnosed our problems as succinctly as this. So she said, if even a small percentage of what the United States allocates to war were instead dedicated to building peace and fostering development, it would address the underlying causes of human mobility. Goddamn. That is 1,000% correct. And that speaks to a lot of problems, right? America isn't just not investing in the Latin American countries that it destroyed, but we're not investing in ourselves. Most of our discretionary budget, which is the part of our budget that Congress can actually adjust, is spent on the military, killing people, blowing people up instead of healing people. We don't spend that money on healthcare, on education. We spend it on murdering people. We have a death economy, and it is despicable. But if we just took a fraction of what we spend on the military, 80 billion, for example, we can fund college. If we take another 100 billion or so, we can fund other programs, free school lunches. But we don't do that, because our priorities are ass backwards. And nobody talks about that, right? She's talking about something that nobody talks about. And when we talk about immigration in this country and on mainstream media, we're portrayed, especially by the right, as victims of an invasion, but we never, ever talk about U.S. foreign policy and how it specifically destabilized Latin America. Our meddling, our drug war policies have destroyed and destabilized so many of these countries. And it's so stunning that we now have the audacity to tell migrants that they don't get to come to live in our country because they're going to destroy our country. But we're the ones who destroyed their countries. They're not going to destroy our country. We destroyed their countries. Immigrants come here to find a better life for themselves, right? But we don't really hear these complaints about Ukrainian immigrants or British immigrants or European immigrants. We only see complaints about black and brown immigrants. Wonder if there's something deeper there that we're not looking at. But since we destroyed all of these countries throughout the years, regime changes in Latin America, meddling, now the chickens are coming home to roost, and Americans are fucking crying about immigration. This is what U.S. policies have facilitated. And wait until you see how mass deportation affects the economy, because Americans don't seem to give a shit about human suffering unless A, it affects them directly, or B, it affects their wallet. So if they don't care that people are going to be deported who've been here for decades, maybe they'll start to care about deportation when it affects their wallet. That's the only way to get them to understand when something is good and bad, because I just feel like people don't really have moral foundations in this country, which is sad, and I hope I'm wrong, but it kind of just feels like this election taught us that, right? Immigrants give more than they take from this country, but nobody wants to acknowledge that, because we're all fucking spoon-fed propaganda on a daily basis, regardless if it's from corporate media or independent media. But listen, a lot of people are going to have to find out the hard way. And I wish that the people who didn't vote for Donald Trump could somehow be immune from the effects of his presidency, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. If we go down, we all go down together, because that's the way that it works. So buckle up, because this is only the beginning and he hasn't even been sworn in yet.
Do yourself a favor and click the join button on YouTube to become a member. Because Mike's doing a great job getting to watch his videos before everyone else is tremendous. Many people are saying this. Join today, folks. You won't regret it.